Hey, look at that. I'm so good at this. Can you hear me now? One of these days I'll figure out how technology works. All right, so welcome here. This is my official college email address. Please use this one when you communicate with me if you email. Um, I don't care which email you use, but if you ask me something about grades, I can only reply if you use your student email account. But even then, I'm not gonna tell you anything. I'll say go look in D2L because everything for grades will be in Desire to Learn. So I don't have to tell you anything over email anyway. That works out nicer. So use whatever email you want. This is my actual cell phone here. I have an office phone. I don't use it. I've been in my office twice since I got hired in 2020 as a full-time faculty member. So I don't go to the office very much. I'll have office hours this semester. I'm going to put out a survey to you folks and my other classes to ask when the best time for office hours are. For you folks, I'm planning to be here about 5:30 or so. We can meet before class if you want. Class goes till 10. I'm not going to be talking till 10 because that's just way too long to sit and listen to somebody. So we can meet after class as well. If you want to come in person is great. And then I'll have all sorts of virtual office hours for people who don't want to drive to campus to ask me a question that we could have done like a screen sharing session for. I'm happy to jump in. We've got great tools. I prefer Discord just because it's already open and there. If you like Zoom, Zoom is perfectly fine. I can fire up my Zoom session, hop on screen sharing sessions and go from there. Can you guys see okay? It's on the other screen too, but it's kind of bright over there. So we're meeting 6 to 10. We only have 14 weeks because of the 4th of July falls on a Monday and Memorial Day. So the class is actually 15 minutes longer than most classes are to make up the 15th week that we're not here. So it's a little unfortunate. We have to do more things in not less time, but like less spread out. So we'll make do. So we're here live. You folks in person found it. A couple folks on Twitch there. Thanks for joining along. We'll be live on Twitch. That's the plan. This is still technically experimental. Part of what we call high flex is apparently the technical term for it. I don't like Zoom. I don't, and I'm a big nerd, and I like Twitch. And then it exports really nicely for me. So again, the downside is you can't talk to me over voice chat. We've got ways to work around that if you really want to, but generally people seem to think the text chat works out relatively well. In all the like end of semester surveys, I've only had one person say one bad thing about Twitch ever. And other people are like, yeah, this was really cool. So, and you're welcome to use whatever username you want. I don't know who's who. The only time I know who you are is when you submit stuff to D2L because like you're the one who logged in and has your name on it. So, and then I'll post all the Twitch recordings out on YouTube so you can go back later and watch it again if you want, or you can watch anytime during the week if you want, if you don't like Monday nights. Totally up to you. The only required synchronous time we have will be the very last week of class when we're going to present our final projects. And everyone will need to present their project at the last time. So we'll do a Zoom meeting for anyone who wants to join over Zoom. We won't do those publicly, don't worry. So for our course catalog description, hopefully there's no typos here. We've had a lot of people look at this sort of thing. There's crazy amounts of curriculum process to make a new course. But sure, it's a lot of fun. So we'll, assuming you know how to use files and move files around and find files, that is important. If you don't know what a file is on your computer, you're in a bad spot. I assume most of you in a programming class probably are pretty familiar with that. And then elementary algebra, we're not going to do anything super advanced with math. No big deal there. Hector, my friend, thank you so much for donating some bits. The other really cool thing about Twitch is people can subscribe and donate bits and things, and I'm not double dipping. I don't keep any of the money. It gets all donated to the Student Scholarship Fund over at the University of Michigan Dearborn College of Engineering and Computer Science. It's a big mouthful, but I'm actually a doctoral student over there, so any revenue that comes through Twitch gets donated to the scholarship fund there, and we've raised about $350 or so just for me being here on Twitch doing classes. So I think that's kind of fun. All right, so things we're going to do in Python then that we care about. Fundamental techniques. So there is no programming prerequisite. So if you've done programming before, it's going to start slow. I apologize. If you've not done programming before, it's actually going to feel a little fast because it's not an intro to programming class. We're going to cover all the basics from the ground up in Python to do all the things we're going to do. So you should be okay. It's not too bad. It is a 200 level class, which generally means it's harder than a 100 level class. Although I don't know how much that still applies in college, but generally the higher the numbers go, the harder it is. So if you've got concerns, let me know. Happy to meet with you folks and see what's going on. Our syntax for designing, constructing, debugging, and testing object-oriented programming programs using the Python programming language. I'm a big fan of object-oriented programming. Python doesn't have to be object-oriented. Like, there's no requirement that says, you want me to zoom that in a little more? I'm sorry, but if that's not big enough here. I got this, usually I keep my tabs open. Nope. Hang on. This one does my zooming. There we go. I've got a weird scroll bar, though. This picture-in-a-picture thing is awful. I should just open the PDF. I'm sorry. Actually, I want to close this tab. There we go. All right. Is that any better? Okay. Just shout at me. I'm super informal. Like, you're happy to just shout. You don't even need to raise your hand. Just shout at me. So I'm a big fan of object-oriented programming. Python doesn't have to be object-oriented, but I think it's a good approach, especially how we're going to solve problems. And when we use libraries and things later on in Python, it is object-oriented. So just because it doesn't have to be, doesn't mean we can't take advantage of all those cool things we get with object-oriented programming. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay. We'll talk about what object-oriented means later on as we go. Structured programming basics, process selection, iteration, as well as primitive, complex data typing methods, parameters, input, output. I'm sorry for reading to you. You folks know how to read. So classes, methods, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance. We'll talk about encapsulation is a little bit trickier in Python, but we'll talk about some of the gotchas if you're coming from another language. It behaves a little funny, but it's really cool. Python's a great language. And then, yes, you will do computer-based assignments in class and out of class. That's what we're going to do. Is that a question, or are you just... Okay, sorry. So again, no prereqs here. Should be okay. All of our courses, apparently, I'm still kind of new. I've only been here 2 years or so as a full-time faculty member. I've been an adjunct for a while before. Have a general education outcome. So OCC has a bunch of different general education things, and all courses need to say we teach this one of these things. So ours is critical thinking. You can apply your knowledge to an assigned task and complete the task. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Python programming language and teach you tools, techniques, and things that you can do with it, and then I give you problems to solve with it. Right? So you can apply the things you know about Python to the task of making a program do A, B, and C. So that's sort of that one here. And then specific to the course here then, the idea here, this course is new and we only run it like once a year. It'll be twice a year next year. The year after, whenever next year is. But what we're supposed to do with these, if you haven't heard before, is these get assessed across all instructors for all sections. And we can see, oh, hey, are students doing well in these generally, doing poorly in these generally? Are they going really badly for one particular instructor? It's still kind of a sticky issue because of politics. But we should be able to see across years how students generally perform. We have general goals around these sorts of things. So we're like 80% of people should be able to pass these by the end of the class. We assume it doesn't click for everyone, right? And that, maybe that's just being fair. It seems a little harsh, but not everyone is successful just because they try. Sometimes it takes a couple tries, or sometimes people change majors. So things that we'll do. We'll use an IDE to develop a running Python program. We'll use the IDE's debugger. The debugger is your best friend. Again, if it doesn't ring a bell, that's okay. We'll get into what all these terms are later. It's a bunch of technical terms. Use variables, operators, input and output, follow Python code and write Python code that does branching, read to and write from disk files, Python classes, objects of that class. This is all the object-oriented stuff. Core concepts of inheritance we'll take a look at. Uses common Python data structures. So these are the built-in types in Python that we can use. Lists, tuples, dictionaries are huge. They're super cool. And then, again, that general education outcome, again, we sort of get a double dip on this. It's kind of weird, but sure. So for the textbook here, the main textbook is an open educational resource by Dr. Severance out at U of M Ann Arbor School of Information. He's got a great, it's actually like a massive online open course, or massive open online, I forget which way those O's go, that you could do yourself. So he's our point of reference, and he actually has videos of him teaching all of the topics here, which is super cool. So if you don't like the way I talk, or you don't like the way I'm teaching things, you're welcome to go watch his stuff too. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all. Right? Really okay. We're not doing all of his projects and assignments though. So like his material, that's our main source of reference. My goal when I teach a class is to show you things that are not in the textbook, because otherwise I'm just showing you something that you can go read yourself. I think that's kind of dumb. So I'll show you other things, and then you can go look at his examples for other examples of the same topic, is sort of how that generally flows. So if you don't ever even want to go here because you got enough out of what I showed you, that's perfectly fine. Not a big deal here. Supplemental materials. We have all sorts of fun software. Now we've got two options. One, you can install everything on your own computer, or two, you can use the college virtual desktop, which should have everything except for this guy installed already. I'm sorry, it gets real low down here. It just shout at me to raise it up. The GitHub desktop client you can install on the virtual desktops, and you get to install it every time you log in because it wipes your stuff. Sorry. I asked IT about it, and they said it takes up too much disk space to save people's stuff. So, sure. It's like a 30-second install. It's not too bad, I promise. But we also found most people use their own computers anyway. So, unfortunately, that means like the few people who don't have computers are inconvenienced more, and I feel bad about it, but I can't solve that problem. They used to give away laptops if you asked for them. They might still with our Student Success Fund. So if you have technology issues, let me know. It won't be a great laptop, but it'll at least run. So we're going to use Python version 3. Whatever. The X is whatever latest version of Python 3. There's a big difference between Python 2 and Python 3. We're finally at the point where like almost all the Python 2 stuff has died out. It was a real rocky transition. No, still a lot. Okay. Most of the libraries I use at least are already on 3, so you might run into some Python 2. The differences aren't crazy, but there are some significant differences. So we'll use whatever version of 3 is the latest. I think it's 3.10. I just went and downloaded it on Sunday, I think. It was 3.10 or 3.11. I prefer PyCharm as my integrated development environment, my tool for writing Python code. There are all sorts of IDEs for writing Python. If you prefer a different one, go for it. You're welcome to use whatever you want. You're just turning in the Python code to me. But this is what I'm going to use in class. Yes, sir?
Is that the best one for debugging?
It has a fantastic debugger. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like it for debugger. Anaconda, I don't really enjoy the debugging in Anaconda. The Jupyter notebooks are really cool, but they feel a little heavy. I don't know. PyCharm is, I guess, heavy too, but oh yeah, it's fantastic. So it'll do all the IntelliSense. Ace, okay, 3.10.4. I'm sorry? The community edition is free. Yep.
Download every 30 days or straight up?
No, just straight up free. The licensing says you won't sell your stuff, I believe.
Okay.
So we should be fine. If you do their professional version, you get more bells and whistles, and then you only get 30 days trial. And it's really annoying. So the virtual desktop has all of this stuff installed already, except for the GitHub desktop client. You don't necessarily need Discord if you don't want it, but again, I prefer this tool. If you want to use Zoom, that's okay. I can meet you on Zoom as well. But we also have a Discord channel for the class, which is, I generally find most people like much more than a D2L discussion board for, hey, post your questions here. Because discussion boards have been around since even before Web 2.0, essentially. We knew how to do discussion board stuff, and it hasn't gotten much better. So I don't like some of those tools. So I prefer Discord. It's great. Any general questions, I would love for you to ask there, because then everyone else gets to see the question and the answer. Is that a question, sir? So GitHub is the hosting provider of the Git source control tool. So we'll talk about this tonight as well. So GitHub is now owned by Microsoft, but they're a cloud service provider that will host Git repositories. So Git is the source control tool started by Linus Torvald, the founder of Linux. GitHub is a hosting provider that gives you services out in the cloud, and they do a bunch of other really cool, fancy stuff. And they have a GitHub Classrooms integration that we'll make heavy use of, maybe not heavy, we'll make use of as well, that does a lot of the magic stuff for me, and it automates some other cool stuff for me. So we'll get into all that. Don't worry too much. If at the end of tonight it doesn't make sense, let me know, for sure. But those are the tools. They're all free. GitHub is public, so again, use whatever username you want. It doesn't need to have your name in it at all. At some point, some people like to take their code and make it public and be like, hey, this is my portfolio. Great. Please wait until after stuff is due to make your stuff public. So I'm going to give you repositories. There's the GitHub Classroom workflow. We'll give you repositories that are private. That means you have access and I have access. No one else has access, which is great. After the fact, you're free to do whatever you want with it, make it public, go for it. So probably don't do fancy pants for your username. You probably want something professional if you want to turn it into a portfolio at some point, but you can always make a new account. So go for it. All right. Are we okay so far? Just shout at me. So when I started using Twitch back over at U of M Dearborn, the semester previously, someone had left a comment in those end of semester surveys that said, Eric Chernesky is like a squirrel with an adrenaline shot. So that was fair criticism. I have 6 kids at home. I drink copious amounts of coffee. This one's empty now. I'm switching to Diet Coke because there's no decent coffee machine around. So I'm usually pretty ramped up all the time. So if it's going too fast, please shout at me. Like, I'm not going to know because I will just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Sometimes I can see the looks on your faces when you look all glassy-eyed, like, whoa, what happened here? And I might slow down. Other times, I'm just going to keep on going. Yeah, why Paladin? Caffeine is God. It's honestly, it's like one of the very few socially acceptable drugs. Caffeine is legitimately a drug. It's a stimulant, but it's socially acceptable. So we can all have a caffeine addiction. And everyone says, sure, that's no problem. You drink 2 pots of coffee a day. I'm supposed to be down to 1 pot a day, according to my doctor. But 2 pots a day is okay. He said it was all right. Not the worst thing in the world. Plus the Coke. Most acceptable addiction, yeah. My friend Y Paladin here is online. He's actually a tech guy out in the West Coast. And that's the other cool thing about Twitch. You can just have a community of people, like-minded people. So I'll interact with Twitch chat as long as they're on topic. So most people are fine with that. I get off on weird tangents sometimes every now and then. Again, shout at me. That's okay. I'll get back on topic. But one of the benefits of college education, and it's sort of a downside, but like you start to build relationships and know people. And that's why like the Ivy League schools where all the rich kids go, they meet with all the other rich kids, and then the rich kids give each other rich kids jobs, and rich kid daddies give their friends jobs and that sort of thing. But networking is legitimately a serious thing. So that's the other reason I'm a fan of Discord. I've got a few alumni hanging out there, and there's like a career channel if you know job opportunities or places to do internships or sorts of cool things. Share that stuff and that sort of thing we could build up. And so I recently had a former student. She's running the internship program for her company out in Troy now, and she sent me a message and like, hey, can you post this to your students? We're looking for interns. So like that sort of thing, I think the network effect is awesome. And I'm not gonna pretend we're super prestigious. It's OCC. Not that we're bad at all, but we're not an Ivy League school. So I can't get you jobs places, but I can show you where there's opportunities, and you folks can chat amongst yourselves and say, don't work there because they're an awful company, right? They'll just make you do a bunch of crap as an intern. And that sort of thing's beneficial. So anyway, assessment and policies and procedures. So this I'm very particular about, and I would hope you guys are too, because if you cheat your way through a degree, it devalues the degree for everyone else who got the degree, right? Everyone else who gets that piece of paper when they go to an employer, like presents that and says, look, I've done a thing. And if someone who hasn't done the thing says I've done the thing and they suck at their job, that employer is going to say, oh, well, that piece of paper is worthless. I'm not going to hire anyone else from that school because they're a bunch of cheaters. They don't actually know how to do it. So if I catch you cheating, which most of the time is plagiarism, right, turning in someone else's code with your name on it, that's basically what happens, right? People go out to Chegg or Stack Overflow or other sites like that, and they copy paste code, turn it in with their name on it. That's plagiarism. That's academic dishonesty. Right? What's the term? Academic dishonesty. Yeah, academic dishonesty. That's our technical term. My policy for the course is you will immediately fail the class. There is no 0. There is no try again. You are done. Over. Report it to the dean's office. Out of my hands. He gets to do all the other follow-up. It is a boatload of paperwork for me to fail people. I don't like it. I complain to my wife about it, and then she gets upset because I'm upset, and she's like, "You're not. Stop it. Just it's not worth getting upset about." Last semester I had to fail 3 people. The semester before that it was like 5 or 6. The semester before that was 8. I don't like doing it. Please don't cheat. Please, like, just do your own work, right? Like, why take the class if you don't want to learn how to do it, right? Like, that's the whole point. I would hope. I get, sure, this one is not even part of a degree program, so most of you are, I'm assuming, taking it for fun, maybe, transfer credit, possibly. So let's just do the work. That being said, I know Stack Overflow exists. I'm not stupid, right? You are welcome to go out and find things online and use pieces of them, just like when you write an English paper. You can take someone's idea, cite your source, and say, hey, I got this little function from so-and-so, but it's not, here's an entire paper I found online, I'm citing a source, right? You can't take an entire solution and paste it in, okay? If you find here, this particular algorithm will sort things for me, It's actually really easy in Python, but sure. Fine, go for it, cite your source. Right? If you're not sure, please ask me. It is so much easier to ask me than it is for me to do the paperwork to fail people, right? Apparently there's an appeal process where you can say, I failed you unfairly, and the dean says, oh, Eric, you did a bad job, they don't fail. It's never happened. I've been teaching since 2012. It has never been overturned for me, okay? And I'm not trying to say I'm perfect or anything, but, and I'm not gonna catch everything. So if 10 of you cheat, I might not catch all 10 of you, right? Let's be honest, I probably won't. But if I do, that's the penalty. So I know I sound like a big jerk. I'm sorry ahead of time, but just right, do the work. Hopefully you came here to learn something. And if you're not learning something, don't come, right? Don't waste our time. All right, sorry, I get that one irritates me. It's a big pet peeve of mine. And then the OCC Handbook is a copy paste here. Again, acquisition of tests or other material. This is my other piece here. Any use of Chegg.com is considered academic misconduct. Stay away from Chegg. They're getting sued for good reasons. They are an awful website. They let you pay to cheat and have tutors do work for you. It's awful. I had all sorts of issues with Chegg, and then when I ask them to take down stuff, they give me a hard time about it. And they're like, no, your professor's not good enough. You need to get your dean to request the takedown. And I get all pissy at them for that. They do, however, though, release records if you get your dean to request it. I can't request it, but if the dean requests the records, they'll send me who posted it, what was their IP address, what's their username, what's their real name, because they obviously you paid for their service, so they have all your info anyway. So if I find stuff on Chegg, I go and have to do all the paperwork, which pisses me off even more, because it's a big waste of my time when I could be doing useful things to find out who's posting the stuff on Chegg. So any use of Chegg, you may not even cite sources from Chegg. Just stay away from Chegg completely, and Course Hero and other similar sites. Yes, sir.
I do know what Chegg is. I feel like you just Stack Overflow.
Yep.
What is the code that
So Chegg is literally made for cheating. Like, here, post your college problems here, and we'll give you answers. Yeah, it's just for college stuff. Stack Overflow is a developer community of like, hey, I'm having an issue, and professional developers use Stack Overflow all the time. This is one of the reasons I think software engineering is like the coolest field in the world, because people just donate their time to answer other people's questions. And we've built out a library of, hey, if you get this error, here's something that might work for you. And people just do it out of the kindness of their heart, because software engineers generally are nice people. Again, hit or miss. You get some bad apples, and you'll get bad apples everywhere, I'm sure. But like, there is no legal repository of, hey, here's just a document for a will you can fill out, put your name on it. You notice lawyers haven't done that for us, right? You have to go pay a service that gives you that template, that sort of thing. Like, life would be so much easier if people would just share their knowledge. But anyway.
We're taking a programming course in summer, but don't want to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's summer. You guys obviously want to be here because you're taking the class, so bless you. Yeah. I mean, it's like solving puzzles, usually, at least for classwork. Like, in the real world, it's sort of like puzzle solving, but not necessarily quite as interesting or as pleasurable, and sometimes you've got to deal with a bunch of other issues and nonsense, but you're essentially solving puzzles. Like, here's a problem to solve, how do I make the computer do it? It's really cool.
You can just take the code off the shelf and it's like engineering. For me, software writing was creative. Now it's become an engineer, which means you are supposed to reuse what's off the shelf. So you strictly strong on that, you don't like that, and you want to write the whole code again.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm all about using the tools, using things that are already done and building on, plug and play sort of things for sure. Yeah, that's huge. And it's a good thing to do. We've learned a lot in software from physical engineering disciplines, which is really neat. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel necessarily. So some organizations are super weird about using pre-built libraries, and we're finding, to get off on a tangent here, if you use someone else's library because they wrote some amazing code and that solved some problems for you, that is now a vulnerability for you, security-wise. If that one breaks, you now are broken as well, and all of your customers are going to be pissed at you, or at least you'll be liable. So, rewriting everything from scratch is painful, and it takes a lot of time, and there's a bunch of trade-offs here and there, and there's all sorts of fun security discussion around that, whether or not it's actually a good idea. I hope it stays, because it's super cool to be able to just write some code that does something and publish it out in the world and have people use it.
It's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, that's what I do for a living. Is I've been doing a log board and Spring Patrol and stuff like that on a daily basis. But it's a double-edged sword, because if you get someone that writes a library, you get a lot of eyes on it, and you get it. Unlike log boards, you get an example.
It's like it was around for like 12 years or so before someone found a vulnerability.
Yeah.
Then they're like, oh, well, let's fix it. And then it's like a day later, so you find another one, and then another one.
Because people are now looking. It's vulnerable. It must be.
Well, now after a month or so, it's like it had billions of eyes on it. This like is like the most vetted piece of code in a
Yep.
repository. So
Yeah, once you can get that code, like was that Log4j was
Yeah,
the issue with
Log4j.
vulnerabilities. I'm trying to repeat it a little bit because Mike probably doesn't pick you up for everyone else who's out there. Yeah, it's getting people to look at it and verify it, and then the community to fix these sorts of things and get them out there it generally feels pretty good. But software is hard. It's hard to fix everything for sure and make things perfect. So I don't know. There's all sorts of process for software, and like if you write FDA software, like for my insulin pump here, it goes through extra levels of testing, which I appreciate, because if this thing screws up, I'm literally dead. Like it will actually kill me if the software malfunctions too poorly. So some sort of like, here's a fun website, no one really cares if it breaks, right? But so, and if we start designing self-driving cars, or like write machine learning models for how cars should drive and figure out whether or not that's a stop sign in front of them, or if it's just a truck literally carrying the stoplights on the highway, which was a really weird edge case. Like who would have thought a Tesla would pull up behind a truck carrying traffic lights? But your software will do weird things. So that perfect is hard to get to. So code of conduct, this again is a copy paste out of here. The grading policy, what most people care about here. Labs, so we'll do a lab every week. It's a small practice. Basically, my goal is not to talk the whole night because that's super boring. Like I get bored of hearing myself, and you folks will want to actually do something. So every week we'll do a lab assignment. Here's something we did in class. Now your turn to go practice it. Try something. They're designed so that by the time you walk out of class, if you stay till 10, maybe not even. Some people work faster, some people work slower, but you can get the labs done before you walk out the door. If you've heard me talk for 2.5 hours and you're tired and fried and don't want to practice, I don't care. That's fine. Go home. But it's really okay. You can do the lab later. So they're not like due by 10 p.m. or anything. You'll have all week to work on it. And for anyone who wants to do it asynchronously, or if you're doing some summer travel, you'll be gone for a while, sure. You got until the next week before class starts to get the lab in. So they'll start at 6 p.m., be due at 6 p.m. the next week for labs. They're just little practices, 10% for those. And I am perfectly fine if you folks want to work together on labs, right? You can put your heads together, work on the lab together. It's literally your practice time. Hey, we talked about something, let's go try it out. We'll do quizzes every week. Same idea. They'll open at the end of class. I have to write them. There's no like test bank, which test banks are usually dumb anyway. So I'll write the quizzes. They're open book, open notes, untimed, just anytime throughout the week, pop in, pop out, 10 questions or less each week. I find if I give quizzes, people are more likely to open their book. That's literally why I have them, right? If I don't give quizzes, then people are like, oh, I don't need to pay attention to the material this week, right? Even though there's like a lab assignment and other stuff too. So ideally, they're meant to be free points, right? If you go and do them, like you'll either find the answers from stuff I've talked about or stuff from Dr. Severance's online book. And he's got like 5 different versions of it. If you want the Kindle version, a PDF version, there's like 3 different websites that host it. It's really cool. But questions from the quizzes will come from there. If it doesn't make any sense to you, please ask me. You don't even like have to guess. Just ask me, hey, Eric, this question doesn't make any sense. Maybe I typoed it because I'm writing them myself and I screw up a lot because that happens. English is hard. Or hey, I'll point you in the right direction. Here's go look at this topic a little more here. Go find the section here. Now, if you're asking me every single week about 3 or 4 or 5 questions, I'm probably going to start giving you less and less help. Is that fair? But happy, like if something didn't make sense once or twice, or that's fine. I'll point you in the right direction. Again, these are meant to be free points like the labs. Right? Everyone should get 100% of the labs. Everyone should get 100% of the quizzes. They're open book, open notes, open internet. Right? Go for it. The projects are the big piece. Right? This is where I give you a larger problem to solve here and ask you to go and do it. So we're going to do 4 projects throughout the semester, essentially every other week. So you'll have 2 weeks to work on it. So we'll do, starting next week will be the first project because we haven't really done enough Python to do any actual projects. Next week we'll get our first project. You'll have 2 weeks. It'll be due before class starts. And generally what I like to do with projects is I go over the solution to them in class. I show you how I would solve that problem and kind of talk through the process and write the code to solve it there. Generally, I get really good feedback about that. I've had one person say that was a waste of time, but like 1 out of hundreds. Okay, they're just really good at it. So sure. Sorry I wasted your time. One exam a midterm exam, 10% here. It'll be open book, open notes, open internet, half quiz questions, and then half, here's a small little bit of code to write. I'm not fond of exams. I think they're stupid, especially when it comes to programming. Like, I don't care if you memorize anything. You don't need to memorize it. Nobody can memorize everything. Just know where your resources are, know where to go look it up if you don't know to find more information, and you'll be fine. So it's low stress. I don't have a practice one because this is the first time we've ever ran the class. Usually I'll give you a practice one, which was last year's midterm, because you have to rewrite them because still people put stuff on Course Hero and Chegg and all sorts of nonsense. But I will give you a practice one, and probably three, that won't be too long. Like the 3 questions will have, if this is a question about A, B, and C, the other question will be about A, B, and C. And a question about F, G, and H, sure, here's my question about F, G, and H. So it'll translate really well. Should be low stress. I don't like high stress exams. I think they're awful, right? I care if you can write code, and that's why you see most of your score comes from projects in the final project here, right? Like if you can actually do the work, that's what I care about, not if you can sit and take an exam and know stuff like off the top of your head. Which I recently went back to school to work on my doctoral program and had to take calculus, which I never had to do as an undergrad for lots of reasons. And I failed Calc 2 the first time I took it because I just now at 30-something years old with 6 kids at home can't keep as much stuff in my head for school as I could when I was younger. So I think closed book exams are stupid too. But that's because I failed Calc 2. I passed it the second time, which, fine. A little more practice and probably doing the homework problems would have helped. But the teacher was like, oh, homework's optional. I was like, okay, yes, it's optional. Okay, sure, that hurt. Yeah, lab is going to be code. Quizzes are like answering questions, true, false. I don't really like multiple choice. I prefer fill in the blank. I think it's, or like real short answer. Nothing more than a paragraph ever for quizzes. Yeah. Yeah, it'll all be on D2L. Yep. Yeah, so the quizzes will be on D2L. Submissions will all be on D2L, actually through Git, and I'll show you all that stuff in a little while. And then the final project, I like for these to be pair projects. I don't require them because, sure. Ideally, people pair up. Generally, it's a better experience if you pair up with someone, and I let you pick your own pairs, so you shouldn't be stuck with someone who sucks. And you'll work together then for the last third of class, essentially. So the first 2/3 is the individual projects. The last third of class is the final project. You'll work together on that final project, and you'll present it the last week of class, and here's what we did. Should be fun. If you want to do it individually, that's cool too. Up to you. Honestly, as a developer, it's really lonely to work by yourself. Okay, it's nice to be able to talk to people, think about your ideas, talk them out loud. They can spot errors, that you can spot errors that they're doing, those sorts of things. So working in a team is actually much better as a developer, as a software engineer, data scientist. You'll get a better product out. So I like teamwork, but it's not going to be big enough that we can put 4 people on it. That's just a logistical nightmare to have 4 people. We're not going to do anything that large either, because let's just be honest, we're not going to do anything that impressive. It's an intro to programming Python class, so we'll do something fun, but it won't be huge, where you need like a team of people on it. So if you do it individually, it's the same project as if you do it with a pair. Because paired up, you still have the additional work of collaboration and coordinating and working together. So it works out to be about the same amount of work, whether or not you did it in a pair or individually. So it's the same assignment. This grading scale should be standard. This came out of the syllabus template they gave me, which is weird that 94 is an A, but 83 is a B, and 73 is a C, and 63 is a D. I had to fill out a change of grade form for someone because I wasn't paying enough attention, assumed they were all 94s. So I don't know why this is what it is, but 94% or higher to get an A. I do round, so like 93.5, sure, close enough to get to 94. 93.1 doesn't really round up, right? We'll do regular math rounding sort of things here. Does that sound fair? And then if you do want, I can give a WS mark after the official drop period. It's like a withdrawal, but it's somehow different. I'm still fuzzy on the whole details, but I enter the mark instead of you asking enrollment services because they tell you no after a certain period. I don't know why. Because if I can do it anyway, why wouldn't they just let you drop? But okay, sure. The end mark, if you don't turn something in the first 3 weeks, or actually 2, because we only meet for 14 weeks, I forget, 2 or 3 weeks, you might get an end grade, with bad stuff happens. So I'm not taking attendance. I don't take attendance ever. We got people online. So if you don't turn in the work, I'm going to assume you're not attending. Is that fair? Okay, so it should be easy. We'll do the first lab tonight. We'll do it in class. If you want to stay till the end, you'll walk out done. Fantastic. You'll be okay. Sorry it's hot in here. It's lovely weather. Usually this room's better than the F building room too, but
You allow extensions for submissions, so if somebody has a 5 plans, they will submit on that particular plan.
so generally we're just about to get there. The late policy, I don't take stuff late without prior approval. So if you know something's happening, sure, let me know. I'm happy to work with you. The reason is I generally go over the answers in class, the time it's due. So like it'll be due by 6 p.m. I'll go over the answer in class for that project, right? Labs, I'm slightly more flexible on. I don't like to take them late because it turns out people are like, oh, I missed the first one or the second one, and then they're like backed up and have 4 labs to do all in a week, and then they don't get them done. So stay current with the labs. Like there's no real reason I can't take them late. Like, so if something happens, let me know. Like if you've had a really bad week, sure, just reach out and let me know. I'll work with you. So this prior written approval, right, is the big thing here. But for projects, I can't take them late because they're going over the answer in class at 6 p.m. So there's 2 weeks for every project, so please plan accordingly. FERPA things, I won't give your information out to anybody. Americans with Disabilities Act, please talk to the Access Office if you need certain accommodations. Happy to work with you once the Access Office has your paperwork. That's actually a legal thing. I can't give accommodations without paperwork. Otherwise, it's unfair, something or other, and the college can get sued. So talk to them. Most of the time, it's like extra time on tests, which we're going to have all week for all of them. Quizzes and the midterm will be open all week long. But feel free to get the paperwork on file so we have it. Happy to have that conversation with you if there's something I can do for you. Jess, thanks for the hydration reminder. The Academic Support Center, we do have CIS tutors. Python is new, so I don't actually know if any of the tutors know Python. I forgot to ask Ms. Rika. So might be limited there. I apologize. We'll work on it. For D2L technical support, call them. That's the website itself. The content is me. Right? Website won't load. Call D2L. Something wrong with the assignment or like the other stuff, talk to me about it. For accessibility standards, we have a link here for something. I don't actually know where it takes you. It's their accessibility standards. Sure. There's a bunch of templates and things that I usually have to use when I put documentation out there, which is fun. Excuse me. Minimum technical skills, be able to navigate the web, use D2L. Sure. Word processing, presentation, yep. And file management and attachment, yep. Hey, Professor Burp, thanks for dropping by.
Are you going to post ahead the labs, or will they all be listed?
Usually I'll post them like after the break. So I aim to talk for no more than an hour, take a break, talk for no more than an hour, take a break, and I'll post it during the break. If you want them ahead of time, I probably could. Honestly, I find if I post them at like 6 p.m., people do the lab instead of listening, which doesn't offend me at all, but sometimes it's distracting for other people. And if you're just going to show up to do the lab, don't even come in person. I don't know. Is that... still trying to find a good balance for that. So let me know. If you want them early, I'm not opposed to it. It's because I don't... Oh, sure. Yeah. So yeah, if you're going to be gone, let me know. I can get those ahead of time for sure. Yeah. That's no big deal. Technology appropriate use regulations. Don't use college resources to do dumb things or illegal things, especially not illegal things. Dumb things are, questionable. But yeah, especially no illegal things. Okay. If you're in violation of the policy, the school will ban you from using school resources, including D2L, which makes it really hard to submit assignments and get them graded if you can't be on D2L. So let's just not do dumb things, please. Okay. Netiquette, sure. Again, I'm very informal. As long as you are polite to people, I'm cool with it. Any sorts of hate and abuse will very quickly come to some issues. So please don't do that. There's a whole policy I have to follow and paperwork I have to fill out with public safety and counseling and all sorts of things if you're mean to people. Let's just not be mean. Let's just all be nice to each other, please. For public safety, a fully fledged active police department, badged police department. They're happy to do all sorts of public safety sorts of things. And then given this as a night class, although we're getting into summer, one of the coolest things I found out they did is if you're not comfortable walking to your car in the dark, because our lots are, this one's actually kind of close, but on the other side of campus, the lots are way out there. Now, they are happy to escort people to their vehicles. More than happy to do that. So just give them a call. All right, for me, typically within a week of the due date, I'll get stuff graded. I say typically, I've not been good about this, I'll be honest. I'm going to try super hard, extra hard this summer to stay on top of it, because hopefully come sometime in mid-July, I'll be baby number 7 in the family, and I expect life to get busy. So I want to not get behind because that is awful when that happens. So usually within a week of when they're due, I'll try and get them back to you. If you email me, call me, text me, send me a message on Discord, usually within 24 hours or less. I mean, that all comes to my phone, which is like always in my pocket, unless my little guy is watching YouTube on here, which I try not to let him because he like clicks all sorts of notifications and messes up my phone. But he's a YouTube addict. YouTube Kids is actually halfway decent, although you get some really weird stuff. There's some Eastern European group that does like these songs, but they don't speak English very well, so they mispronounce a bunch of words. So like as he's saying, repeating the words that they're saying, they sound a little funny. I'm like, where did you hear this? Like I don't know. It's like potato, particularly. Like, I don't know. It's like goes for all these foods, and he loves it. He loves food. Anyway, usually pretty quick. If you haven't heard from me within 24 hours, feel free. Please reach out again. Like you're not going to bother me. You're not going to make me mad, upset, or anything. Like I might have just lost it in the pile. Honestly, I got a lot going on. So usually get back to you pretty quickly. If I haven't, feel free to ask again. And then our schedule, the final thing. Whew, we're getting there. Course introduction and tools, introduction to Python tonight. That's what we got tonight from chapter 1 is the intro to Python. And then we go mostly a chapter a week for a while, and then we cram in a bunch of chapters because they're real short later on. So again, project every 2 weeks here. We've got Memorial Day, so that whole week doesn't count. I'm just assuming those weeks aren't there, sort of when this happens. So project 1 will actually be due on 6/6, and then project 3 will actually be due on 7/11. Because some people, given 2 weeks worth of time to start a project, don't start on it until the day it's due. I don't recommend this practice, especially because if I can't answer your questions and you have questions about it, you're going to get mad at me, and I'm going to be mad at you because you had 2 weeks to ask me questions about it. Happens more than I want to say, right? People are like, oh, last minute before it's due, like a couple hours before it's due, asking me all sorts of clarification questions. Let's just not do that, please. We want low stress summer. We want a nice, cool, chill summer. So they do 7/11, so technically 3 weeks, but we just pretend this week doesn't exist, right? Because go out and do your 4th of July stuff, go out and do your Memorial Day stuff. Don't need to cram on Memorial Day to get something in due on a holiday. That's a bad idea. Go do your barbecue. So for 7/11, the plan is to do the midterm review session where I'll give you the practice. I could probably even give you the midterm early. We'll see if you want it early or not. Go over the practice midterm, and then the exam will open and will be due by 7/18 before class starts. So you'll have that whole week from 7/11, 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., 7/18 to do the midterm. Again, it's relatively small. Like they're designed so that if I wanted people to sit in class and take them, they could. That's how I designed them. But then I give you all week because it's stupid to like sit and code in 2 hours or less. Now, I hate that. Most of the time, it's not super high stakes like that pressure in the work environment. Occasionally when your production system is down and you're losing millions of dollars a second, or like Amazon, it's a lot of pressure. Most of the stuff we do won't be that high pressure. So again, I don't like that sort of high stakes sort of stuff. So you'll have all week on it. Project 4, and then the final project will start on 8/1. We don't have quite all month because again, we're missing that 15th week. Or we don't quite have 4 full weeks. You get 1, 2, 3. So I might give that one a little early. I'm not so sure, because then it bumps into project 4 and then I feel bad. Oh, I clicked a button on my mouse. Come on. So we'll see, but we'll have time. And then this Python and databases, we're not going to do tons with. We're going to talk about the topic, give some examples, have a lab exercise. But we won't need to go super deep on it, so we'll have time after class as well to work on the final project. Same with visualization and plotting. There's a gazillion things you can do to make really cool graphs in Python. There's some amazing libraries to make really pretty things. I can't show you all of them, so I'm going to show you, hey, here's like a couple examples. Here's a website that lists literally every graph you could ever want. You just need to learn how, it asked for A, B, and C, I need to give it A, B, and C. So we won't spend huge amounts of time those weeks. We'll have extra time for the final project in class to work on it. So if you do want to pair up with somebody, at least you can meet with your partner then, or just work on it yourself and hang out till 10. I'm happy to stay and answer questions. Like I'll work with you on your final project, help you get unstuck. I'm not going to tell you it's your problem, go away, right? Like that's literally why they pay me, to help you with this stuff. So I won't code it for you, but I'll get you pointed in the right direction, make sure things get sorted out with your syntax errors and all sorts of that fun stuff. And then our obligatory notice, it might be changed if we need to. Okay, I think everyone has that sort of thing. So this is the tentative schedule, technically, but usually we're pretty good at sticking to it.
What about the final presentation after the class? So
Yes.
write the code and
Yep, you're presenting your final project. So you'll whatever the final project will be, we're going to build something. You'll get up in front of the class and show them what you built and how it works and run it.
Oh, okay. And, we will then keep it with it for the free.
It's all the same project. It's a little boring,
Oh,
everyone doing the same thing, but everyone kind of approaches it a little bit differently, which is one of the fun things in software. So not everyone has the same set of inputs or questions, and there's some differences. It is a little boring, I apologize, but it's hard if I let everyone just do anything, essentially. So
How long will it take?
I'm sorry?
How long will it take?
Less than 5 minutes, hopefully. Yeah, just you essentially get up and run it. So I'll give you for all the projects, I'll have rubrics where you get 2 points for this, 2 points for this, 2 points for this, 2 points for this, and I just check the boxes and I grade it. If it does it, great. I'm not big on coding style or guidelines. I'll yell at you a little bit, but I'm not going to take points off because it's not pretty. Back when I took my first intro to coding class, not that many years ago, was it 2004? How old am I? I lost points on an assignment because a code comment was missing. And I was super upset because my code worked and accomplished the task it was supposed to get done. Why would you mark me down because I didn't have a comment in there? And I swore to myself that day that if I ever had the chance to teach, I had no idea I wanted to teach at the time, that I would not take points off if a project did what it was supposed to do just because there wasn't a comment there. And I've stuck to it this many years later, right? Not to say comments are bad. There are reasons we want to do comments and documentation and that sorts of things. I'm trying to teach you how to code, right? The documentation stuff you can pick up on your own. It's part of software engineering, yes, not part of coding. So it's good stuff. I don't mean to trash it, but I could care less if you have comments or not, right? And we're not writing big, massive public APIs that people really need documentation for. Otherwise, they have no clue what's happening. We're writing small little programs for ourselves here. We don't need lines and lines and lines and lines of lines. So, hey, Random, how you doing? Thanks for being online here. I've got chat like on this edge of the monitor here, so I'm trying to make sure I follow for anyone who's around. Yeah, my home office setup is so much nicer for trying to keep track of all this stuff because I did all my classes remote on Twitch last semester. Generally worked out pretty well. And it was not as hot at home either. Bless you. All right. Questions, thoughts, concerns? You okay so far? Sorry, I hate reading it to you, but like we got to cover some of the stuff at least. Okay, cool. All right. I've been going for almost an hour, not quite. Do you want to take a break now? And then we'll come back in about 10 minutes and pick it up with some actual stuff? Or do you want to start some stuff and then take a break and then come back to the stuff? It's literally a vote. Whoever shouts out. Break, no break. Break? I got 1 vote for break, 1 vote for do stuff. We need a tiebreaker.
Great.
Break. All right, 2 votes for break. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back in a couple minutes and we'll pick it up with Intro to Python, show you how to install the tools so that you can do them yourself. They're generally pretty quick installs. And then we'll talk about GitHub, talk about Python, talk about the first lab. Still have quite a amount of stuff to do, but we're getting there. So, all right. Yeah, see you in a little while. I'll put some music back on. All right, let's make sure I remember that mute button here. Alrighty. All right, so before we get into Intro to Python, let's talk about the tools real quick. So a couple things to download here. Yeah, much nicer outside, but it is buggy. Python you want to do first. The GitHub order doesn't necessarily matter, but you want to do Python before PyCharm. Will make life just slightly easier for you. So go to python.org, downloads, and you'll find the latest version for your operating system. If you use a Mac, that's fine. If you use Linux, that's fine. All this stuff. Actually, I don't know if PyCharm has Linux. I know they have Mac. But you should be fine in whatever operating system you want. You'll download and install that one. It's pretty quick here, especially with the internet. It's relatively fast here. And you can go install that one. I think, did I already do Python 10? Yeah, I've got Python 10 already. But I was working on this this weekend, making sure it still all worked. You'll run that installer. It goes quick. There's an option so it can install local to your user account without admin permissions if you want, or computer-wide in program files for everybody if you want. It really doesn't matter one way or the other. We're not actually going to use Python directly. We're just going to tell PyCharm where Python is installed. So, and it's pretty good at finding it. So either option is perfectly okay. If you want to be using Python more as a scripting language, you probably want there's an option to add it to the path. You could do, so like if you open up terminal or command prompt or whatever, you can type Python and it does stuff. But it should be not too big of a deal here. So you want that one, and that should install pretty quick. It shouldn't need a reboot. And then PyCharm, again, there's 2 links here. Make sure you pick the community version, which is the free one. Don't do professional. Right? They want to charge you money for that. Technically, they'll give educational licenses for things, but I always feel like that's a big pain in the butt, and we don't really need any of the cool bells and whistles for it. So the Community Edition is free. That's the easier one to do. So you'll download and install that one. Actually, I already have it, so I don't need to finish that one. So that one will download and install. And then Python and PyCharm should already be installed on either the college PCs here or the virtual desktop, which actually are the same thing, if I remember right. So when you log in here, you're actually getting the virtual desktop, just like you would at home, which is fun. But again, it doesn't save anything. So like it all has to be added ahead of time. And then the other thing you'll need is a GitHub account. So you go to github.com, and you can make a free account. Again, don't pay for anything. Please, you don't have to give them any payment info. Make an account. So your account then, or your username is going to be used for things throughout here. So it doesn't really matter what it is, but that like your account then becomes like your website. So you can go to github.com/EricJaneski, which is my username for GitHub, and you can see all of my public repositories here. You guys won't have any, which is okay. Again, if you want to make one later, that's perfectly fine. No big deal there. But you got public repositories here, and then it gives you this fun, like, hey, when did you make commits, and all sorts of other fun bells and whistles. So GitHub's a fun tool, great stuff. But they give it away for free for educational use. You can get a student developer pack if you want to get a bunch of other free stuff too. Sure, some of it's fun, some of it was not all that interesting. But once you have the GitHub account, you want the GitHub desktop client. So it's either the link here or desktop.github.com will take you to the download for the GitHub desktop client. Yeah, so yes, we'll just say yes, yeah. So GitHub is a source control tool. So Git is the source control tool. GitHub is the cloud hosting provider of Git. So Git, its job is to manage and maintain and have track of code. So anytime we write code, we're going to, Git uses the term commit. It takes a snapshot, it saves it at that point in time of what the code looks like. And then what GitHub lets us do is synchronize with the cloud. So we can take the code from our computer, commit it, make a snapshot, that point in time, done, and send it out to the cloud essentially. So people use this, GitHub's actually very popular. There are other Git hosting tools, but this is quite a popular one out in the industry for collaboration on team code stuff. It has all sorts of other cool things Git can do. For us, when working individually, we're not going to scratch the surface of most of it. Don't worry about it. It's okay. What it lets us do is essentially save a folder, and the entire contents of that folder gets saved, and then it's done. Right? It's got it, and then we're good to go. And once we can synchronize with github.com. So one of the coolest things that github.com lets you do is you can go to, let me find, like this is a course in the winter here. It's essentially a file browser. So it's a little small. Let me zoom that in here for you. And you can see any of these folders here, and you can say, oh, let me look at lab 3, and show, here's the contents. Here's a folder, here's a file. Python uses py files by a convention. It's not a rule. It's not like Java, where you have to be certain kinds of files. It's py, generally it's Python, and you can click it, and if it's a text file, you can actually see the contents of that file right on github.com, which is super cool. So you can actually see code online. The other really handy thing here is all of these line numbers here, like, hey, my code here is 72 lines long. If I'm having a problem at line 52, I can click that line number. It goes into the URL as a, whatever, that's hyperlink, something or other, reference, internal, something or other. And you can take this URL and copy paste it into some sort of communication to me, an email or Discord message, and say, hey, I'm having problems with my code at this line. And I can go online and I can see your lab assignment or whatever code you have as well. You don't need to email me files, right? Because that's silly. It's 2022. We don't need to be emailing files back and forth. We can use tools to manage code and collaborate on code. And it turns out, if you're asking me questions, we're collaborating, right? We're using the collaboration piece of GitHub here, which is really nice. So all the code I do in class will get posted to the class GitHub repository, which I haven't actually made yet. I need to make that one. Let me make a new Python or a new repository here. CIS 2131 for summer 2022. So I make my repositories public because it just makes life easy. I could technically add you all one at a time, but that is a bunch of work for no gain. I don't care if anyone else sees my code. Right? It's nothing special, let's be honest. If you're making a repository, README files are very nice and helpful. They give you the text here that says, hey, this is what it's about. Like, here's some information about a repository, is fine. Git ignore is very important here. One of the things Git is supposed to do is manage code, not all sorts of other stuff. So Python, not quite so much here, but other languages that are compiled languages, you take your code and you run a program and it compiles it into something that's executable and runnable. Python doesn't do that. We'll talk about that later with Intro to Python, but you generate a bunch of files that if you have the code, you can generate. So the general rule is anything that you can generate, you don't need to add to Git. So git ignore tells the Git tool, hey, ignore these files. I don't need any of these here. So we're going to use the Python ignore here to say, hey, any of these types of files, we don't need to add. So don't worry about them. And then I'm going to add a license to mine. I think it's the MIT license, the easy one. I forget. It probably doesn't actually matter here. For you folks, you don't need to license anything because it's private. Right? If you want to make a public portfolio at some point, you can think about what kind of license you want to give if you're putting your work out there for people to see. Sure, that's probably another concern here. So I'll make a repository. Now, this is the repository here for the class. So I'm going to go back to our course info here, and I'll add the link here. So any code that I do up front here will show up on this website. So if you want to see what we did in class, I'm not going to attach it as files to D2L, because again, it's 2022. We don't need to be managing a bunch of attachments and nonsense here. You can go look at it on github.com. This is our course repository. Okay. And again, I've got a quick little bio of me here. Hopefully you had a chance to see that. It's not all that important. I'm the only Eric Chinesky in the world, so it's pretty easy to Google me and find my info if you haven't already. Look me up, that sorts of things. The permanent link to the Discord server, which is the same one as the syllabus, but just to make it easy to find for people, or also my Zoom room if you want to meet over Zoom. I just use my personal room here, and that should be perfectly fine. So no big issues there. So Git is a very fancy tool, does all sorts of amazing stuff. It's almost like magic, except it's not. It's just a piece of software. What it does is it watches a folder for changes. And when anything changes in that folder, you can then do something about it. Okay? So I like easy shortcuts. So now that I've downloaded the GitHub desktop client, you want to log in. It'll take you back out to the website, and then you log in and it takes you back to the tool. It uses that sort of authentication. It's pretty quick. You can, from your repository, click on this code button here and say open with GitHub desktop. Okay? So what's going to happen is I'll give you a link. For every lab assignment, you'll get a new link that will automatically generate a new repository for you. So you'll get a bunch of different repositories for labs, you get a bunch of different repositories for projects. And when we get to the final project, we'll talk about that later. I can set up access for both people in a pair if they want to have access to it. But we'll open it with GitHub Desktop. What that's going to do is make a copy of that folder on my computer. So I'm going to keep a copy locally, and there'll be a copy out in the cloud. So Git is known as a distributed source control tool. So anybody who has the repository or the folder has everything. They've got the entire history of everything in that folder ever, which can actually get a little bit big at some point. But don't worry too much about it. Our stuff won't get that large, but like at organizations who do really big pieces of software, it causes all other sorts of issues, and software engineers like to argue about all sorts of weird things, whether or not how you should organize your repositories. So we're just going to put one project per repository, essentially. So every time you have a lab, you'll get a new repository. It's just a folder. So I've got a couple shortcuts here. There's the repository menu or the couple buttons here. I'm sorry, I can't zoom this one. Your two favorite buttons are going to be Show in Explorer or View on GitHub. Show in Explorer opens your computer's file explorer browser, or Finder on Mac, I think is what it is, to that folder. So now there's a folder on my computer, C, Users, Eric, Documents, GitHub, CIS 2131, Summer 2022. The name of the folder is the name of the repository. Bless you. So these are the files in that repository. You notice there's a hidden folder here. You might not see it depending on your Windows file preferences. If it's hidden, don't touch it. This is where all the Git magic happens. Don't ever touch this folder. Okay, life will be good. The git ignore, the license, and the readme, you can see on the website here, git ignore, license, and readme, right? So the readme is a markdown file, or markdown format file. It's just a text file with markdown formatting. I don't really care what's in here. You can put anything you want. But you can do nice looking readmes here, and it's a convention now with GitHub that if you view a repository, you can see the readme file right out here. So if you go like GitHub, Microsoft, .net, I forget, I think it's just .net. Here, this is Microsoft's .net code repository, right? All things .net, and it has a really cool README with all sorts of information about X, Y, and Z. Right? That's what the README is for. So that's sort of a convention, adds a nice little way to find some information about projects here. So again, I don't care what you do with them, but it's there, and that's what they're there for. Okay. So now that I have a folder on my computer, anything that I do in here is going to show up if it changes in the GitHub desktop client. Now, if you are familiar with Git and prefer other tools, sure, I don't really care. I like the GitHub desktop client because it's the exact same tool whether or not I'm teaching Java or Python or C# or C++. I can use the same tool and show people the same things. This tool will stay the same. PyCharm has integrations with Git. I mean, sure, if you like them, go for it. If you like other tools, go for it. There's all sorts of clients here. But right now, there's two main tabs here. There's a Changes tab and a History tab. The History tab is literally every change that has ever happened to this folder. Right now, there's only been one change ever. This was the initial commit. And it says, in green, there's three new things. Green is new, red is removed, and yellow is changed. And we'll look at some of those in a little bit here. But you can see, hey, we added a bunch of new files, and you can actually click on it and see the contents of those files. Again, a little small, I'm sorry. But you can see what happened. So Git is just a glorified file watcher. If I do something in this folder, like make a new, let's just do a new text file here, test.txt. I got too many dots there. Test.txt. And I go put some contents in here. Say, hi there, 2131. This is line 2, more lines, it's hot, okay? Back in the GitHub desktop client here, it says, hey, there's something changed, right? It's watching that folder. If anything changes in that folder, it's gonna tell me about it. It says, hey, it's something new, a green plus, it's new, and I can see line by line by line what it is. Sure. If you want to save this to get it out to the cloud, you need to make a commit. A commit is just saying it's a snapshot. It's, hey, take a picture, a snapshot of that folder at this point in time. And it saves it commit by commit by commit. And not too big of a deal. We don't worry too much about it. You need to give it a message here. This is the small box here. There's a large box for the description. Depending on your organizational policy, you have to put certain things places. For me, I could care less. Commits, the messages you write here will show up on the website. So if we look back at that .NET site here, you can go and see, hey, there's been 1,198 commits since this repository was created. And you can look at them and say, okay, this is Sentry Free for OSS. Fixed link to Boo language repository. These are the commit summaries. That's why organizations sometimes have policies or around this is what you should put in your commit summary message, because it will show here as a quick, let me see what happened. I don't care what you put. You can be silly. Some people just put blah. Some people swear at the computer. Again, I don't care, right? It's not important. But you have to have a message here. So we'll say like test file. Then we click the commit button. The commit button saves the snapshot, that point in time. Now that picture of the folder is saved, but github.com, the cloud doesn't know about it. So now over here, it says, hey, I need to push. So the idea with Git is you have a push system. You push changes out to the cloud, or you pull changes from the cloud down to your computer. For you guys, because you're the only one ever working on the code, right? You're only ever going to push. When you're working in a team, you need to pull changes that other people made from the central repository down to your computer. So everyone communicates to the central repository, and then you all push and pull changes from there, right? And you can have multiple people working on it. All sorts of crazy things can happen. Generally, it's pretty straightforward, not too big of a deal, but I'm going to push my changes here.
It's a bridging in case when multiple users are working on the same file.
Usually it's the first person to change it wins, but then the next person who changes it, their changes go in, and then the next person changes, they win. There's tools and processes around making changes that we just don't have time to get into. If you're interested, take the software engineering class. Mr. Hadi Nasser talks a little bit about source control as part of software engineering. We just don't have time, I'm sorry. I'd love to talk more about it. But so now back on the website, or if you don't even have the website open from your GitHub desktop client, you can say view on GitHub. This is your other favorite button. It will launch the website for you to your repository. And if you can see it on github.com, I can see it on github.com. If you don't see it on github.com, I won't be able to see it on github.com. I know I'm saying it a lot. It's github.com. It's lost all meaning. But that's the great thing about this tool is if you can see your code on the website, I'll be able to see it on the website. So in terms of turning work in, everything you do happens on GitHub. The only thing you're going to do in D2L is give me a link to it. What's the URL? Right? So you go to test.txt, and now your URL is, don't worry about the blob thing here or main, but you see test.txt in the URL. Yeah, Professor Burp, github.com. You can just copy paste this URL and send it to me. Again, there's a slightly different thing we'll do for lab in a minute. I'll show you. No, so D2L has nothing to do with code. And you don't want to put code files in D2L. So we'll go through the process. It's brand new, it's okay. That's literally about all we're going to do tonight. Talk about Intro to Python and do this process from scratch for everybody. Make sure everything's installed, make sure everything works, get the link, and be able to get out there. So GitHub is a collaboration tool, hosting provider of Git. So we're going to use it for class 2. So it's an industry, a very common tool used in the industry. It's fantastic. We're just going to scratch the surface of what we can do with it. It can do all sorts of other really cool things. We don't care too much about the other cool things. Is that a question or no? Okay. So here's my file. Now, if I want, I can go back here, open up my file, and change it. Here's the other really cool thing that this tool does. So I'm going to say, let's go change something here. We'll get rid of line 2 and we'll add in something else. We'll say, hi, I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. And can we go home yet? No. Yes. Maybe. Sure. Save my. I'm sorry. I'm hitting Control S for save. It's just habit here. You can go file save if you want to. So I'm saving behind the scenes. If you don't save the file, GitHub won't see that it's changed because you haven't saved the changes to the file yet. That's just a file thing. But now you'll see orange. The file has changed, and you'll see at the line level what changed where. You'll see line number 2 in red is gone. Line number 2 in green is new line 2. Again, it's kind of small, sorry, but it's just showing you this line changed. So what's really cool is when you're looking at code, you can see what changed where, when. So the entire history of all the changes everywhere are going to be in Git. So I'm going to make my changes here. I'll say update test file, commit to make the snapshot. Now my local repository has it. The cloud knows nothing about it, right? I need to make sure I push out to the cloud, push my changes to the cloud. And then I'm going to go view on GitHub, make sure that it shows up here. I know I already have the browser open, so I'm just going to refresh it here. And now we'll see my changes. And I can see, hey, this has been changed here. Now what's really cool, again, other fun things you can do, Git has this button for blame, which is a really fun tool. What it does is it shows you what line changed when and who did it. So in a team environment, when multiple people are working on the same project, you can see, oh, Susie changed this line, Bobby changed this line, and Mary changed this line over here. Sure. And if something's not working, you know who to go talk to because they're the last person to touch it. Is generally what it's helpful for. Or if it broke, you know who to go blame. That's why it's called blame. Which is fun. So you can see this commit was 26 seconds ago with the update test file commit. This one was 4 minutes ago with the test file commit. That's why the commit messages are nice and useful. You generally want something helpful there. But again, for our class purposes, we could care less. It doesn't really, it's just for you to see. But you can see that sort of thing, which is fun. Right, so all it's going to do is track files that are going into that folder. Now what we're going to do with PyCharm, I'm going to fire up PyCharm here, is we're going to make a project inside of that folder. If we put all of our code files and other PyCharm related project files inside that folder, Git can now track them for us. Right, and that's the goal. We want Git to be able to track our code and synchronize our code. It also cuts down on the dog ate my homework excuse, because once your code's out in github.com, it's really, really, really unlikely they'll lose it. Like, that's literally how they make their money, is hosting organizations' code. They happen to do it for free for organization, for classroom use, which is nice. We take advantage of it, but they're really not going to lose your code. So if you've done the work, you've committed and pushed to the cloud, and you've seen it on github.com, it's going to be out on github.com, right? Hopefully nothing happens to your computers, but once the code is out on github.com, you're not going to lose it, is the other really cool thing. So in PyCharm, if you've never opened a project before, you're not going to get this window. Let me close it down. You'll get this window instead. You'll get in a second. This one here, you'll get the what do you want to do? And your recent list will probably be empty because you haven't done anything yet, and that's okay. So what we want to do is a new project, right? The most important thing when we do a new project is where does it go? By default, it likes to have a PyCharm's project folder here in your documents. So it's your users documents folder, and then it usually is called PyCharm projects. We just want to go change that, all right? I know what the name of my folder is, but you're welcome to click the little browse button here and use the file browser to go find. So inside of the GitHub folder here, you'll see all of your Git repositories. So I'm going to go find ours here. I've got way too many of these, sorry. 2131 summer, there we go. And now we get a bunch of other options. So we tell it, hey, use this folder for my project. Put everything that I'm doing for this project inside of this folder, please. Which, if it's not inside the folder that is the Git repository folder that Git is watching for us, we won't be able to get the code to github.com. Right? It has to go inside this folder here. So we're going to put it in here. You get a bunch of other options here. So Python is really interesting in that it is not a compiled language. So the Python, it's called the Python interpreter. Python.exe is the program that runs that will then take some Python code and do something with it. So when you're writing in Python code, if you use other libraries, you import those libraries and load them on your computer. Depending on what you're doing, you don't necessarily want to load those libraries into your main Python install. So when you have Python installed, depending on where you installed it here, like mine, this is my older version 3.7, is in C, Python 3.7, python.exe. Sorry, it's really tiny here. But if I'm using this Python interpreter and I go add libraries, it will add it for literally everyone on my computer. And there's a small chance you clobber a bad thing. It's not so likely, but if you're doing a lot of other, we're not going to do anything at that level. We're not going to use that many different libraries, but you don't want to clobber things. So what PyCharm lets us do is use these new environments or virtual environments, where it's essentially making a copy of Python and using that copy of Python and putting all of the libraries in that copy of Python so that you don't screw up the computer level Python install, which is generally a good thing. Again, most of the time we don't care. It's not going to matter too much one way or the other here. The only thing you'll notice is if you do a new virtual environment, it's going to take a little longer to load. Sure. That's okay, because it has to go and essentially copy Python into this location here. It does a bunch of file operations. So you can make new Python environments if you want here. So it's going to say, okay, let's make a copy of it in this location from, and then you can pick, so my Python 3.10, notice, is in app data, local programs, Python, yada, all this nonsense. This I installed for my personal user, not with admin permissions, in the root C Python folder or program files folder. We don't care about any of that. So there's all sorts of crazy options here. Generally, the new environment is the good thing to do, but because we don't care, we're not going to do anything nuts. I like the previously configured environment option because it saves time. We don't have to do any copying here, and I'll say, hey, I'm going to use version 3.10 here. Go for it. if you don't have anything in the list here, you have an option to add a new environment. You can add a new environment, and then it should, from these drop downs, you can go find where Python's installed. Generally, it picks it up. It's pretty smart. But if it can't find where it's installed already here, you can go make a new one. Or you can find the system interpreter here should pick up, okay, you installed it on your system at this location. We do this essentially once, and then it's there for the rest of the time. So if you have any trouble with it, it's fine. I can hop on and help you with it. But it should have picked up your Python install. So all that to say, neither of these options really matter much. Pick one or the other. This first option is slower, usually. That's the big thing there. So usually we want the previously configured environment, and that makes life good for us.
Question.
Yeah.
This document just shows me one time still, right? Not
Well,
everything.
for every project. Yeah, because everything we do will be a new project. So lab 1 will be one project, lab 2 will be another project. Yeah. So it'll be slow. Slow the first time you make the project. When you're working on a project, it doesn't have to load it again. You're fine to keep moving. But yeah, the setup of the project is slow. And then there's this lovely option here, create a main.py welcome script. This is my favorite option here. I love when the computer writes code for me because it will give us some starter code in a starter file. It makes life easy. Okay, and we say create. It says, hey, my directory is not empty because the Git repository had some files in it here. So we're just going to say create from the existing sources. It will add the license file and the README file. We don't really care. It just says, hey, you have some files here already.
You want us to do this right now?
No, you don't need to right now. So we don't even have the link to your repositories yet. So I'll make that link in a little bit, and then we can try it once. So I want to show you once. I'll make the link, and then we'll do it a second time where you're actually following along, if that sounds okay. So that way you've seen it all once, and it's not as super new, and then we'll go do it a second time where you actually try it yourself. Okay? So in here, then, we can see all of our file. Oh, it didn't make my main file. Why didn't it make my main file? It did not make my main.py file. I'm sad. I think I was confused here. So I'm just going to right-click the folder and say, hey, I want a new Python file. You can call it anything you want. Main is fine. Naming matters at some point, but we don't care for now. Now, PyCharm is really nice and says, hey, I notice you're using Git. Do you want to do something with this with Git? I don't really care. You can add it if you want. You can cancel if you want. It technically does something behind the scenes. We don't really care. Not too big of a deal.
They run together?
So it has its own Git integration if you want. But again, I don't like using a tools integration for Git because the GitHub desktop client is the same no matter what language I teach. So I show everyone the desktop client, and I feel like it's a little bit more intuitive, gives you a little more information as well. But that's my thing. So now I made a main py file here. And let me zoom this in a little bit here. Notice it's empty right now. I'm just going to make sure it's saved. And then if I come back to my GitHub desktop client, it should say there's a bunch of new stuff here. If it doesn't right away, just give it this little fetch. We'll kind of refresh it here. Now a bunch of new stuff showed up. There's a .idea folder. So in Windows, anything that starts with a dot is a hidden folder. You should ignore it. Just let it do what it wants to do. These are project files that PyCharm uses. So a bunch of weird things here that it essentially saves what line you're on and saves other stuff about the project. And you can see all of them. It's not all that terrible. But anything in there, we don't care. Just let it change. If it changes, it changes. Fine, just let it happen. But you'll see what we do care about is main.py is a new file and it says it's empty. Sure, so I can make a commit now and I can say, hey, project started. I like to commit a lot. It's a habit because once it's committed and pushed, github.com, the cloud has it, and I can't lose it. So I'm going to commit a lot. You don't have to if you don't want to. You're welcome to commit once when you're done with everything. Sure. Either way is perfectly fine. So if you don't want to make the commit, that's okay. You can go write your code first. It's okay. But I'm going to commit and push. So commit and then push to get all that out to github.com. Now, all that project nonsense is out there in an empty Python file. Now, of course, when you learn a new programming language, the first thing you make the computer do is say, hello world. I don't know why, but that's the tradition. So we're going to stick with it here. So in Python, you say print, and then you give it a set of parentheses. Now, depending on what IDE or development environment you used before, if you've ever programmed before, you may or may not like that it tries to be helpful. So if I start a quote, it ends the quote. If I start a parenthesis, it ends the parenthesis. Usually that's really good, okay? But it's really frustrating for people sometimes when you're starting out new that it's typing for you because you don't really know what it's doing. But anything we put inside of these parentheses here will get printed to the screen. Okay, so we want it to open and close. Because every time you start a parenthesis, you need to end the parenthesis. Things have to balance. Otherwise, Python has no idea what's happening. We like to imagine Python is a really smart programming language, does lots of amazing cool things, which is true, but it's really dumb, and a single missing parenthesis will make the whole thing not work. Like in your entire file of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of lines of code, one missing piece here will just screw the whole thing up. So it's not really the smartest. So inside of the parentheses then, we give it quotes. Now Python is fun. You can use single apostrophe quotes or double quotes, full quotes. Python could care less. There's actually some differences we'll talk about later between the two. Don't worry about it for now. We'll get to that. So I prefer double quotes because I use Java and C# and other languages that always double quote things. So I'm usually going to use double quotes. If you want to use the apostrophes, you're welcome to do that too. Again, we'll get to those differences later. Not too big of a deal right now, but either one is fine. So I start the quote and it ends the quote. Now anything inside of here is going to get spit out to the screen, right? But again, we wanted to start with hello world. So we'll start with hello world here. That's the only line we need here. Print hello world. It's good to go. Now, we don't actually have an option to run it yet. So usually you have this little run button up here in the top right. It's not there yet. And notice it says add configuration. PyCharm doesn't know what to run yet. It's confused. But if you right click, you can say run and tell it, hey, this is the file I want to run main.py here. I can say run main.py. And it says, oh, sure, you want to run main.py. So behind the scenes, this is what it's actually doing here. That's showing you it's running the Python executable, and it's telling it, please run this file. So the Python program that we downloaded, Python 3.10, whatever, is the Python interpreter. It will go and read a Python file and do the things that you've told it to do inside of that file. So it shows you that. So I could take this line here, and I could copy paste it into terminal if I wanted. Or your command prompt or PowerShell, or, mine's actually PowerShell in the Windows terminal option here. Or in Mac, you can do it in terminal there as well. So if I just paste that in here, actually PowerShell, I think I need // no. Ampersand? Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting what I need here. Oh, it just worked, okay. It was smart enough. Usually you need like another character to tell it to be executable. And I see the output, hello world, here in my terminal. I'm never going to ask you to run stuff from the terminal, but it's super cool. You can, and a lot of stuff that we might do could be automated, where you can run tasks and run scripts and sort of things from the terminal and do all sorts of fun things here. It works. So it's just showing you, so the output here is just showing you that's what's happening, and then here's your output from your program. And then it says, hey, process finished with an exit code 0. This is sort of an old-fashioned thing here. If a program ends as expected, you'll get a 0. If a bad thing happens, you get something other than 0. And you used to have like big old books with sets of codes and what that error code meant that you'd have to go through and look up here. Nowadays, we just Google it. We say, hey, it ended with error code something. We just go Google that, and we find out what happened. Not all that important. So the output of our program is sandwiched between the, hey, this is what I'm running, and yes, I finished successfully. We get a little bit of extra junk in PyCharm, but it's okay. We're just going to ignore that junk. So then if I wanted, I'm just going to go to the next line. Now, Python is very particular about white space. So if I put a space in here and I try and say print, hi, I'm Eric. Oh my goodness, this is why I need to use double quotes. Double quotes. It has a little red line here. So anytime you see a little red line, it means PyCharm is upset and telling you something's not going to work right. And if you hover over it, it's going to give you a little message. It's real small here, I'm sorry, but it says unexpected indent. It did not expect a space there. So if I get rid of that space, the red line goes away. Now it's happy. So even a space in the wrong place will upset Python. Now, generally, PyCharm is pretty nice and will tell us we did a dumb thing. Right? That's why we like these development environments, because they are tools written by developers for developers. So they know all the things that annoy us, and they will suggest all sorts of things to help us. You'll get this little light bulb all the time that says, hey, do you want to do some sorts of things here? Sometimes the light bulb is really helpful. Other times the light bulb is really annoying. So generally we'll ignore it. Every now and then I'll show you it's really helpful. We can click something and do some magic. But it's okay. Now notice before when I had used single quotes here, so I should show you. So if I said, I'm Eric here, it's kind of green for some of it here, and then it's not green at the end of it here, and then it's like stays green. So it's saying you have some text here that's in green. This is called a string. And we'll get to some more of the details later. But if it changes color, and now we get all redlined here, we confused Python. Because Python says, okay, you start an apostrophe, you end an apostrophe, everything inside of that is just some text. What is this after it? And it has no idea what an M Eric exclamation mark is. And then it's green again saying, oh, you started some text again. You want me to do something with text, right? So that's why I went back and I changed it to a double quote mark here. Python says, oh, you started a double quote. Until I see an ending quote, everything must be text. And it's fine with apostrophes in here.
One more single quote before M. So that way, single quote, and a single quote.
Yes, that's a little more, as you can tell it. Yes, it's a special character. There's all sorts of fun things you can do to tell Python, no, you really meant this character. There's like 4 different ways to do it. And we'll get to more of those when we talk more about strings. But if you see the red line, something bad happened. That's essentially it. So I'm going to go back to the other quotes because it's probably a little easier here. Because most of the time we don't have quote marks inside of here. But if like we're telling a story, and we'll say, I don't know, Bob said, this is fun. And you want that to be in quotes, right? You can double them up, right? Versus with apostrophes, you can double them up. So if you want an actual quote to spit out here when we run it, you can put double that quote in here. Oh, and no, totally lost it. Shoot. Is it triple? I really should be remembering this. This is not the kind of thing I keep in the top of my head. No, I think it's a backslash quote. Yeah, backslash quote. And this is why it's annoying, right? Different languages will do these sorts of things differently. So if you want a quote, you can put a backslash quote in. Now I should get quote marks back out. There we go. And now we see Bob said, this is fun, which none of you are thinking it's fun right now. And that's okay. It's still new. So we made.
The last parenthesis has got underscore and then it got that.
So this is PyCharm trying to be helpful. If you notice, this one is yellow, not red. So red are errors. Yellow is saying, hey, you're not meeting our style guidelines. So this PEP 8 is Python something about style guidelines, and say if you write Python code, it should look like this. It'll still run whether or not it looks like it, and the style guideline says no new line at the end of the file. So if I go down one more line, that goes away. So it says anytime you write Python code, there should be a blank line at the end of your file because that's what we've decided is good Python coding style. Sure, I don't really care. Sometimes the yellow lines ignore me or annoy me. Other times I just tune them out because they show up a lot, and that's okay. So if I come back to the GitHub desktop client, it says, hey, this file's changed. You have 3 lines here that are all new, right? Remember the last time we saved this, we took that commit, it was empty. We'll say, okay, this is hello world. Commit and push. Right? And I can go view it on GitHub and make sure that the github.com website has the latest changes. So I can go find main.py. I can click on it and it will show me these 3 lines. Oh, that's too zoomed, sorry. Oh, wrong direction. I can zoom. Right? And we can see the contents of the file. And again, if you have questions, you can like click the line number, take this URL and copy it, send it in a Discord message or email me and say what about. So it's really cool. It's really handy that we can keep all of our stuff in GitHub. Yeah.
How do you run it?
So you don't run it from the website. So back in PyCharm, you can right click and you get a run option. Once you've done that once, then you should have the little run button up here, or you can go to the run menu and say run. Like, so with any development tool, there's usually going to be like 4 or 5 different ways to do something. It's crazy. So one way will be a keyboard shortcut, one will be a mouse command, one will be a button, usually, because as you learn the tool, you tend to want the faster ways of doing it, but we still want people to be able to do it from starting off here. Yeah, no semicolons in Python for sure. So other languages use semicolons for meaning the end of line. Python says when you go down a line, you meant the end of the line, which is generally pretty fun here. But if you say, hey, I want to print, and if we want to put in some really long text here and tell some really long story here. So here's some really long text. I'll tell a joke and you'll all roll your eyes at me. I love dad jokes, ... Right? A general rule of thumb is that if you have to scroll left and right to see the code, you've done a bad thing, right? Because if someone else is looking at the code, it's taking them extra effort to go see what's happening here. Now, at some point here, I'm zoomed in a whole lot here. If I zoom back out, you'll usually see this kind of white line here in PyCharm. Once I zoom out to a normal level here, dad jokes, did you the one about the pirate? Sure. Now, the whole thing here, it's telling me the line is too long. It's gone more than 120 characters. Someone somewhere decided that 120 characters is about as much as you can see on a regular monitor. They haven't really updated it yet for widescreen. It used to be 80, so it's gotten a little bit bigger here. It'll say this is probably bad. Again, it's perfectly fine. Python could care less. It will run it here without any issues here. And I can tell you a joke about the pirate. You know the pirate's favorite letter? You'd think so, but it'd be the C. Still are. Sure. I tried.
You're wrong.
So what you can do here is if I'm in the middle of this line here and I hit enter, notice it does a weird thing. It ends the quote here, starts the quote, and this is actually indented now. So Python, oh, I should be able to spell pirate. Pirate. There we go. If something is indented, Python says it sort of belongs to the line above. Essentially, an easy way to think of it. So usually Python would be upset at stuff like this, but because it's indented here, we're okay. If I back this up here, to here, it's going to be upset. Right? We should indent it. Okay. It'll generally, for quotes, it'll figure it out. If you start doing other code, and we'll talk about it just a little bit, it'll get really confused. So because Python uses white space to mean things, we have to be careful about our white space. So that's tabs, that's enters, the new lines, and even spaces occasionally. Most of the time, it'll tell us what we're doing wrong and those sorts of things. And it goes generally pretty well.
So when you run this, will it be in one line or it will be?
So this one was too long. So when we run it, it will come out as a single line. Yep. So it comes out as a single line here. Yep. So what's happening behind the scenes? When print runs, it takes whatever you've told it to print, and then it adds a new line character. So behind the scenes, it doesn't look like it, but there's actually a character here that's the new line character that tells your computer, go down a line, please. So we don't see it at all. So you don't ever see new line. So in the GitHub client, notice this is the ending line. You don't see anything here. So the GitHub client will show you your last one. It should. Doesn't it show me the new line? No, it's not even showing me. So sometimes it'll show you a new line. Is it this one? This one here. It gives me a little character that says there's not a new line. It's really hard to see, but there's a little red circle saying not a new line. So because new line is the standard, right, it's jumping out like, hey, you probably did a weird thing here. So if we add that new line character and save it, then that goes away. Save it. Come back. Come on. Refresh. Wake up. Seriously? Save. Run it. Come on. I put the new line in. No, I did. I put 2 in. All right, there's 2. Back off the 1. There it goes. Occasionally it's dumb. It's a little slow sometimes. Think of it like a 5-year-old. It just you have to tell it a few times for it to get the hint. Generally it behaves. Occasionally you need to stare at it the wrong, give it a funny eye. So now you don't see that character, but you don't see anything at line 6, which is kind of weird because I have a line 6, but technically line 6 is empty, and the only thing here is a new line character at the end of line 5. We don't care too much, but it's some weird, funny details about it here. And now we can say added a bad joke. Oh, we didn't even tell the joke, did we? I told the joke. I didn't put it into the code. That's okay. All right, and then it should be out on GitHub here in a second. I will have it out there. Awesome. So I did want to show you. So the website here, PY for Everyone, is really cool. There's a couple versions of his book here. He doesn't use dark mode. It's okay. Other than that, Dr. Severance is a really nice guy, except for he doesn't use dark mode. So you can go to the book section here and go find his book. From here now, you can do all sorts of other crazy things. Okay. the Kindle edition, the PDF, the HTML with Jupyter notebooks from LibreText. You can order it from Amazon if you want the actual print version here. I think it's only a couple bucks here. I think that's his affiliate link too. Let's see. So if you like print books, you're welcome to get the print copy here. Now I'm going to recommend the website because that has a really cool feature I'll show you in a second. Let's see if we can get this to load here. There we go. $10 new for paperback. Not too bad. But on his site here, this is my favorite one. This HTML from Trinket.io seems to be the coolest one out there right now. So this one will give you little snippets as you go through. Like, so here's chapter 1, here's the introduction. And when we get to some place that actually has something interesting, some Python code, let's see, come on. Should be right here. Just got to load it. There it goes. So this is actual runnable Python code in your browser. So you can look at his examples and go and edit things as you want and click the run button and it runs. So you don't even have to like copy paste stuff down into PyCharm. So I like this version here. It's pretty cool. Now, some of his examples I'm not the biggest fan of. Like I would not do this in the introduction first class, like count how many big words there are in my paragraph. Sure, he's a real nice guy and he's really smart. Honestly, he's smarter than I am, so go for it. But I'm going to give you different examples. Okay, so you can come back and you can go through his chapter 1 later. You can even watch his YouTube videos of him teaching it if you want. Yeah, he's real nice. He's a good guy. So it will go and do some stuff and you can run the code and it's really neat. So that's the Trinket.io piece of it here. It's pretty fun. Gives you some cool stuff there. Yeah, but any version you want here will have the same text. You just don't get the interactive bit without the Trinket.io stuff. So he's actually got, and you can download all of his code samples if you want here. You can go to his code page and you can go find any of his files and download them. Notice they're all like PY files, Python files. Why would I want to translate this? No, thank you. From French.
And to take code from here to your page, you cannot use it.
This won't solve any of the problems that I'm going to give you to solve. Yeah, so you're welcome to his code. It won't accomplish the tasks that I'm going to ask you to do. So that's his code page. So he's got all sorts of cool resources here. You can check them out. If you log in with a Google login, you can actually like do the MOOC part of it and get a little badge, and you can like attach that badge somewhere and be like, hey, look, I did this course. Sure, that's kind of fun. But again, we're not using his assignments, but if you want to go through his stuff for practice, fantastic. Honestly, the more code you write, the better you get at it. It's just like anything. You can read about riding a bike all day long until you actually go and ride a bike. Right? What's the point of reading about it if you can't do it? So go and do the thing, practice it, you'll get better at it. And eventually you ride a bike long enough, you can probably ride without touching the handlebars, which my kids think is super cool. Although I always get frustrated when they try it because I'm like, no, you're gonna fall off. But they're like, you did it, Dad. And they're like, yeah, I did. Shoot. Look at my cool tricks. And then there's actually a Git repository for his book, which is super cool. So like, if there's typos in his book, people can go and submit changes to him using GitHub. It's a really fun thing. So you know all sorts of cool things. Look at that. Oh, the price was right here. How did I miss that link? $10, not too bad. Not too bad of a deal. There's like a sticker up there. I don't know. I'm sorry. I am like a squirrel, I guess. It looked different. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's got all sorts of practice exercises you can do through his site here, and as you submit them, it will like tell you if you did it right or wrong automatically, which is kind of fun. So he's got some cool features there. All right. So, other cool things about Python, sort of the introduction, like what do computers even do, how do they work? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time telling you about it. You can go read it. It's in chapter 1. It's cool stuff. But what's great about Python is that this file here, I can take and put on most any device that has the Python interpreter installed. And if your device can install the Python interpreter, like on Mac or Linux or like some mobile devices run Python. There's actually a calculator now that's similar to the TI-83 that runs Python. If you have the Python interpreter, you can run this Python file and it will do the thing that you've told it to do, which is super cool. Other languages, you get different files or executables or essentially something you can double click and run. So you can't just double click a Python file and have it do its thing, because the file itself doesn't do anything. It's the Python executable that does the thing, and the thing that it does is read your file and execute the file. So it's more of a scripting language. You're writing Python scripts that the Python interpreter then goes and runs here. Other languages, C++, C#, Java, will compile your code. They'll take code that is just text here that you can see. It will turn it into something else that then is run on the machine. Technically, .NET languages run on the .NET runtime. Java runs in the Java runtime environment. C++, you can do cool stuff and actually build executables that will run on your machine. The problem with some of those is when you get to advanced pieces here, not necessarily all C++ programs will run on Windows and Mac and Linux and mobile devices and yada, 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 right? They're not necessarily cross-platform. They can be, and there's crazy things you can do for that sort of stuff. Depends on how crazy you want to get. But for Python, we write our scripts here and we can run them anywhere we want, which is nice. So as you learn more about Python and you want to do cool things and you want to work with lots of data and do data science things where you have to like crunch millions and millions and billions of pieces of data, your little laptop probably can't do all that. But you can take your code and say, hey, cloud, go run me. And the resources in the cloud can go and do the thing, generally if you're willing to pay for it, right?
So when you're sending a code to, let's say, customer, they can actually go and read your code.
Yep. Yeah, so if you're delivering a Python program as like, hey, customer, you want some Python program for something, they're going to see everything because you gave them the Python script and it's just plain readable text. Now, it's going to have all sorts of Python code in it, but they can open it up and look at it and read it. Yep.
That's the best part in the compile React program because it's a binary, nobody can read it.
So any language that will compile an executable, you can decompile. And then, so if someone really wants to see what your code is, they can deconstruct it from the executable. It'll look really ugly when it's deconstructed. It's sure. So you've obfuscated your code a little bit, but they can still essentially see everything it's doing. So yeah, you can do fun stuff with code for sure, but people are going to see it. And then if they know what they're doing, they can go and change it. And they can tweak it and run it and do fun things. So all right.
There's no way of encrypting your code. I mean, I don't want my customer to see my code.
Don't do it in Python. No, because the Python interpreter needs to run it. So you can like package stuff up into a single package that could do all sorts of crazy things, probably. It feels like a lot of work. Yeah, there might be ways. I've never had to. So yeah, so there might be ways to like hide your stuff. But if you're going to develop a program, someone says, hey, I'll pay you $200 to write a program, you're going to give them the program and then they have it. Right, so they can see all the work that went into it, and if it's 5 lines of code, they're probably going to wonder why they paid you $500 for it, or whatever. But all that fun stuff. Okay, it's been almost another hour. I'm getting really hot up here again. Again, generally I aim for an hour or less. If you want to break sooner, just shout at me. Like this is your folks' time here, so just shout at me. Let me know if you're getting too hot, too tired, need to go stretch. That's okay. If you want to get up and walk out and come back, like as long as you're not bothering people around you, feel free. That's perfectly okay as well. So why don't we take another break? We'll come back. We'll talk last little bit about Chapter 1 stuff, a couple more highlights, and then we'll look at the lab exercise. Make sure your tools are installed. Make sure you can do the first lab, which is your own hello world, essentially, where we make the computer talk to us. Get it out to github.com. Give me the link. Make sure you're at least up and running the first night. That sound like a good plan? Is that a question? Or generally not. This room is usually better. So heating and cooling technology hasn't really changed much since 1970. Literally. There's not a whole lot that's changed. So we've been able to put a man on the moon for 53 years now, and we still can't keep a room a good temperature because heating and cooling hasn't had any technological advances. So usually it's not so bad though. Sorry. Eventually they'll turn on the air conditioning. I don't even know if the air conditioning's on in like the entire building. Apparently there's like a master switch, and once they turn off heating, they can't turn it on again because it's hard. I don't understand. So like they have to commit to AC. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry it's so hot. Oh. Yeah, hopefully the AC will. Usually the room's a decent temp, so. Hey everybody, welcome on back. Yeah, no worries, the downloads will take just a minute. Shouldn't be too bad. Usually the Wi-Fi here is pretty good. So I'm working on typing up the assignment here. So again, assignments will be in D2L. I'm going to give you a link here. You can click it in like 30 more seconds. I haven't hit save yet. It will take you to the GitHub Classroom site, which will, when you click the button, generate a repository for you that you have access to and I have access to. It's lovely. From there, then we'll go clone it. We'll write our code. It needs to do a couple more things that I've already done. We're going to talk about those in a second here. But a basic Hello World program. We're going to introduce ourselves. First, your name and major or reason for taking the class. If you're not like in a degree program, perfectly fine. We're going to have you list, what is it here? Oh my goodness. It's like the basic introduction here. I have no brain right now. This is why going till 10 p.m. is going to be rough. It'll be rough here. So yeah, any previous programming experience you have. 3, any hobbies. You have 4 plans for summer. And that's, and 5, anything else. What else you want me to know? Nope, so you're actually going to write Python code that prints this to the screen for the lab. Oh, it's an assignment in D2L. Yeah, let me show you in a second here. Yep, and then put this in the labs category. And you're going to turn in the URL. So submit the URL to your main.py file. All right, so now in D2L, you can go to assignments, and there should be a lab 0. Again, in programming land, we always start with 0 when we count things for reasons. We'll get to those reasons later. Don't worry too much about it here. But I'll take you through all the steps. So I'll basically do it here now if you want, and you can follow along. So you need Python installed, you need PyCharm installed, and you need the GitHub desktop client installed. Once you've got those 3 things, you'll be up and running. Okay. So we're going to start with edit assignment. My goodness, edit. Yeah, indexes. That's right, Professor Burp. My view is always funny here. So this link here will take you to a site that says, hey, do you want to accept an assignment? CIS 2131, summer 2022, lab 0. It says, okay, once you accept it, you'll get this repository here in the OCC repo or organization. That's a GitHub thing. Don't worry too much about it here. We'll say accept the assignment. And it says, okay, you've accepted, give it a minute. It takes like 5 seconds or so. So by the time you can like take a breath and refresh your page, now you'll have a link to your repository. So there's not a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. Like if we're doing more, it would take longer. But again, ours are pretty quick. So now we have a repository. You only have to do that step once. Right? It will make a new repository for you to use for this assignment. Now you can click that link and it will take you to the website. Here's our that's a little big here, sorry. Here's our website. It's mostly empty. There is a main PY file here because this kept being annoying when PyCharm doesn't make one for you. So I made a file for you. It's out here. It's empty. It says code goes here as a note. Nothing super interesting. So now that we're on the repository site, we're going to use the code button here to clone it or make a copy of this repository with our GitHub desktop client. Go to code, open the GitHub desktop client. It should launch out to the site and it says, hey, do you want to clone this repository? And we say, yes, I just clicked the button. I want to clone the repository. If you like to put files in certain places, you are welcome to put it somewhere other than your documents GitHub folder. Sure, doesn't matter. Totally up to you. You just need to know where that folder is. So if you change the default here from your C users, documents, GitHub, repository name folder, you need to go know where to find it later. I like defaults because they make life easy for me. Sure. You don't need to put all this stuff like in a OneDrive or a Google Drive or some other cloud storage tool because we're literally going to be keeping it out on github.com. GitHub is our cloud storage tool for our code. If you also keep it in your OneDrive documents, now you've got it out in 2 different clouds, which, sure, not going to hurt anything, but we don't need to. So I'll say clone. It will go and make that folder on my computer and put those initial files in it. Takes a second. We okay so far? Oh, is it still installing? Okay. And I can help you out after as well. Generally, I won't do the labs for you, but this is like the very first one, so I'm going to do the lab for you. Other nights, I'll say, go do this thing, and then I can wander around the room and actually like look at your screen, or for anyone who's remote, we can like hop on Zoom or Discord, and I can look at your screen to get the labs done. So, yeah, hopefully most nights will be done with content by like 8:30, 8:45 or so. If I go till 9, it's a bad night, for sure, because 3 hours of listening to me, even with 2 breaks, it's a lot. So, but we can hang out and work after if you like that. If you like to hang out and work. Yeah, we can talk about Zoom after we're done with this stuff here, Quang. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. So now I've got the repository, right? If you don't know where it is, or you want to go find it, right, you can do the Show and Explorer button here, and it'll just open up your File Explorer right to that folder. So it's in this location here. Great. Now I'm going to go back to PyCharm, and again, usually you get this. It'll open up your most recent project, or if you close it, you'll get this like starter screen of what do you want to do. So from our starter screen, we want to make a new project. So every lab, every project will be a new project. A project is just a grouping of code that PyCharm knows how to group together for us. PHP was 2454, Professor Burp. And now it says, where do you want to put it? I don't want to put it in GitHub Python project. That is the wrong location. That's not my GitHub repository. If I put it here, my GitHub client won't see any files, and I won't be able to get something out to the cloud. And if I can't get it to the cloud, you can't get it to me. Okay, so we're going to click Browse and go find, probably in your GitHub folder or wherever you put it here. We'll go find our CIS 2131 Summer 2022 Lab 0 dash your username. Notice mine says Eric Chernesky. That's my username. Yours will say dash your username here. And that's the folder we want. We say OK, picks the path, make a new interpreter, use an existing one. Sure, doesn't really matter here. Again, I want 310. The differences are very small for what we care about here. So if you don't have 310, you have 3 something, you'll be fine. And we're good to go. So I've got my folder picked out. I've got my Python interpreter. It knows where Python's installed. We're going to make the project. Now this will tell PyCharm to go make all those files in that idea folder. So make sure it goes into your repository folder. That's the important step. If it's not in here, Git won't be able to track changes and won't be able to see it and make commits. Yeah.
I use that for Mac.
Okay. Yep. In PyCharm, you go to New Project. Yep. Yeah. Once you've got the repository, you've got the folder. Now we have a place to put our project. Oh, okay. Yeah, you got to install PyCharm if you haven't yet. If you're on these college computers, it's already installed. Okay, that's all right. We can. We'll finish up probably in another 10-15 minutes or so, and then I can wander around the room and help you out if you didn't get it done. Yep. So make sure you're in the repository. If you don't put it here to start, we can always move it later, but that's like another step you have to go and do. So good programmers are lazy in that they don't do more work than they need to. Right? We want to minimize our efforts to maximize our output. Right? So let's do less work. Oh, and throw things too. I will say create. And yeah, it's not empty. Make from existing sources is fine. That's why there's that main py file already there for you. You'll see there's a README file that it likes to open because maybe there's something interesting here. Again, it just says template. That's sure it gets made here. But now over in the left-hand side, I see there's already a main py file. I can just double click on it here and it opens up. So you can have it like a ton of tabs open in PyCharm if you want to work on a bunch of different files at once. Great. And it says code goes here. So the pound sign, not a hashtag, because I am old. This is a pound sign, is the indicator to Python that this is a comment and not Python code that it should do anything with. So if you see a pound sign, Python will ignore everything that comes after it. So this says code goes here as a comment. You can erase it if you want. You can leave it there if you want. No big deal. And we're going to go and do those 5 things here from D2L. So I'm going to scroll on down here and copy paste here because I forget a lot of things. And it's real upset here. That's okay. Well, if you don't like it being upset at you, you don't need to copy paste it in. I just won't want to have to flip between this screen and 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 this screen. So we're going to print your name and major. So I'm Eric Chernesky. My major is, oh my goodness, what is it even called? Doctor of Engineering in Automotive Systems and Mobility is the name of the program. Sure, I didn't come up with it. And it says, oh, Ternesky's probably misspelled. Yeah, you can add your own name to the dictionary if you want. So sure. Reason for taking the class, right? I'm teaching it. Sure. I'll add that in here. Say, I'm taking the class because I'm teaching it. And oh my goodness, I used single quotes instead of double quotes here. He got upset with me. Let me put that back. There. Okay, so sure, your name, major, reason taking the class. If you have it all in one line, I don't care. It's okay. I like you to be able to see everything without having to scroll left and right. So I will never go beyond that 120 character mark. You're welcome to. It might upset me a little bit, but you're not going to lose any points because your code is really long. Right? That's perfectly fine. All right, that's number one. Number two, any previous programming experience? I've been programming since I was 5-ish. Not serious programming. I have an older brother who's 7 years older than I was, and he taught me how to write a batch script to run Commander Keen on our family computer. Probably doesn't make any sense. It's okay. But that was my first experience. Like, I can make the computer do things, and I was so excited at 5. And then he went into computer science, and I'm like, hey, that sounds like fun. And so I went into computer or software engineering. Not technically, I don't technically have a computer science degree, but that's another story. And I've been doing software ever since because I think it's really fun. Okay, sure. Any hobbies you have? Print. Oh my goodness. I like to play Dungeons and Dragons. If you couldn't tell from my tattoo. Sure. Also video games. This one. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry? Oh, thank you. I have to get used to like people talking to me. Usually it's only been chat for like 5 semesters now since the pandemic. It's a little weird. The fall semester when we started back before like the new COVID variant happened and we were all worried about it, was in person, but I offered online options and like literally 2 people came out of 20 or 25 in person. And occasionally it was 1 person. So it's fun, you know, it's nice to have the option. You hit master's level on Apex for the first time last week. That's awesome, Professor Perp. I've never gotten into Apex. I like video games, but I'm not as good at first-person shooters or third-person shooters. Is it first or third? I forget. Or the shooter games. And I'm definitely not as fast as I used to be. I used to play a lot of Counter-Strike when I was a kid. I got pretty good at it. But now my reflexes just aren't there. So, all right, plans for the summer. I'm hoping, oh, double quotes again. That's annoying. Hoping to adopt baby number 7 in July. So that's my plans for the summer. And then here, obviously, with you folks. And anything else you want me to know? What's another fun fact about me? Kind of boring. Another fun fact. I got nothing right now. Nothing interesting. Oh, I also like to run, and I'm training for my 9th marathon. All right. Running is a lot of fun. And it's quiet when you're out running. It is not noisy like my house is. So that's also a benefit.
You know what happened to the first guy that ran a marathon?
That's the Greek guy, right? Didn't he die?
He died.
Yeah. Running is obviously dangerous. Bad for you. Didn't we change the distance? Like, I forget the whole story of the marathon distance.
It was the run from, I can't remember what it was, from the beach to the city of Marathon. It was like 46.75.
I thought we changed the distance at one point to like make it, I forget. It's a fun story, but it's a fun experience. It was on my bucket list of things to do, and I had a buddy who's like, "Hey, I've done this run before. You should run with me one year." This was 2014. And I was like, "Okay, I'll sign up for it." And so I do the Free Press International Marathon. You run over the Ambassador Bridge into Canada, back through the tunnel, around Detroit. It's a lot of fun. He did not sign up until later when registration was full. He was like, "Oh, sorry, can't run with you," which is okay because he's a lot faster than I am. My goal literally is to finish. And I'm happy if I finish and cross the finish line because you get 6.5 hours before they kick you out at the free. So I made it in like 5:50 something last year. And I've gotten slower. Yeah. When you register, you check your passport and they say you should have it on you in case something happens during the race.
Okay.
So I keep it in my pocket inside a Ziploc baggie because otherwise I'd like sweat through it and it would get really gross. You have to pay for that, don't you? Even if you have a real passport, you have to pay for the additional passport card.
But passport card is cheaper than the driver's license. Passport card.
But the passport card only works for Canada, or the passport you can use worldwide.
They effectively use it everywhere except
Really?
because they need a stamp it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Then we've done lots of international travel for our adoptions. The land border crossings, not planes. Yeah. Actually, I need to renew my passport now, which is sad. It's a process. All right, so that's my lab here. So I've done the print commands. I'm going to go back to the GitHub client, and it'll say, hey, there's a bunch of new stuff. Right, again, all this stuff in IDEA, we don't care about. This is all PyCharms files. Let them change. Right? If it changes, great. We care about our main file here. Main.py says, hey, there's a bunch of new stuff. Great. Now I need to give it a commit summary. Notice it says required. Sorry, that's kind of small, but it's required here. So here's lab 0 done. I'll say commit and push. Now to turn it in, right, we'll go to view on GitHub. It will launch your repository's website. Go to your main PY file. Make sure your code is here. If your code is on github.com, if you can see it on github.com, I can see it on github.com. If you don't see it here, something didn't happen. Okay? Right? That's the time to contact me. Ask me for help. Okay? We'll get you moving. Grab this URL, turn this into D2L. So when you submit to D2L, it just has a text box for a text submission. Just copy paste that in. Just give me the URL. So nothing links your GitHub account to your account in D2L. So, and again, because I don't care what your usernames are, I have no way of knowing who's who. The only thing that links it is when you submit to D2L, you put a URL in, I can click that URL. Okay, that's how I know it's yours. Okay, and if you come to this page and it doesn't work, so if let me take this URL and open it, say in Firefox. I don't think I'm logged in. So if you get a 404 not found error with a cute little picture, what's the picture? Come on. Maybe. Page not found error? Yeah, here it is. This little, he's an octo cat. I don't know why, but that's their logo. It means you're probably not logged in. And it's saying, hey, you probably want to log in here, don't you? So these repositories are private. Only I have access and only you have access. Right? So if you get this message, just go log into GitHub. Okay? If you log in and it's still not there, then we've got problems. Right? And something didn't happen along the way. Okay? If you can see it, you're in good shape. And we can go from there. This URL, when you go to D2L, it will ask, there's a submit text box. You just paste in that text box. I can show you this in a minute. Let me do this. It looks like those. So D2L is done here. I can't get to my student account unless I go to the entire class list. Best I can tell. This card changes. I don't think I made any changes on this card. If I probably should have saved. Did I mess that up? No, let's do that before. Yeah, let's do that before. So to be like as a student here, let's go to the class list, which is down the one. I can't show that screen actually. That would get me in trouble. Just 1 second. Okay, the list here. Everything said. I just do not. I just have to set up again. There we go. Wow. Come on, computer, you do it. All right. Try this again. All right, back, maybe. Real hard button here, sorry. Some other stuff. Now let me know my student account. Your users, documents, GitHub folder. Yep. And then inside GitHub, we need one file, one folder per repository. You probably put it as folders. So under the submit, you just have this text submission. And here you just paste in the URL. Come on, copy paste. There it goes. And you can save. Sorry, you're getting a little laggy here. I think we're just about done. All right, close down some of the things. Excuse me. Okay, so it's submitted, it's done. You get an email saying it was submitted. Great, life is good.
Additional students benefit. Which one should I choose?
You can just do the free GitHub. So if you used your student account, it's like, hey, you have an EDU account. We want to give you free stuff.
Oh.
The free stuff, some of it's cool, some of it is not so interesting. But a bunch of people, it's called the GitHub Developer Pack. So you get like free trial offers from all sorts of companies that are like, hey, learn our tool so you can go use our tool. Try it for free. Some of the free stuff is fun, but you shouldn't need any of that stuff to use GitHub here.
I have missed maybe show it out. The task with the GitHub login.
Mm-hmm.
Can we download something from
the GitHub desktop client? Yeah, it's desktop.github.com, or there's the link in the syllabus for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Unexpected server response. Sure. I mean, it should load. I don't know. In the course information? So you can just go to it's desktop.github.com and you can download it from there. All right, so I think that's about all we got tonight. Again, go check out Chapter 1. He's got more information about general computer stuff. Usually you'd read about. It's not all that interesting for me to spend a bunch of time talking about it here. Some basics. It's good to know. And then a little bit later tonight, I'll post the quiz for Chapter 1 and stuff we've talked about and stuff from the website. It's all fair game. Open book, open notes. And then we got the lab, and then we'll meet next week at 6. Oh, I also will send you a little survey asking what time is good to have office hours. So I have set aside 7 hours every week for meeting with students, my office hours. So it's across all the classes, but I want to ask everybody what time is good. It's not uncommon for me to meet with people like at 10, 11 p.m. because I'm usually up late. Early is not usually good for me. I don't do 6 a.m. That's just not my schedule. I got on the computer so I wouldn't have to get up super early. But throughout the week, I've got lots of time I can schedule for office hours for just drop-in times for meeting. Now, dropping in is a little hard virtually because I need to know you're going to be there, essentially. But we can meet on Zoom or Discord, and I'll reserve that block of time to meet with you folks and see what's going on. So I've got 5 classes this summer. Should be a lot of fun. But should be a pretty good summer. So able to answer questions. And outside of office hours, perfectly fine to contact me. I'm not going to ignore you until my office hours because that's not how life works. So I don't like to do meetings on the weekends, but if something really bad happens or that's really the only time you can meet, usually later at night after my kids are in bed, I can meet with folks late on the weekends. Other than that, most of my weekends are pretty busy. But it's on my phone, so you have a quick question, shoot it over to me, and I'll try and answer quick questions. I just can't usually do a lot of screen shares on the weekend till late at night. So I'll send out a survey. You can fill in sometimes, and we'll go from there. All right, so let me end this here. I'll export this out to YouTube in a second, and we'll go from there. So if you're online and want to meet, just shoot me a message, either email or find me in Discord. I'll put you in the queue for meeting as I walk around the room here. Thanks, everybody.